Okay. Hi,
Thanks.
everyone. I think for most of you, I'll be hidden behind my slides, but for those of you that I haven't met before, my name is Lizzy Jongma. I am the ICT manager for the network Oorlogsbronnen, or the network of war resources. I've been working for the network since 2016. There's even an older version of the website than the one Michiel showed. I threw it out of my presentation this morning because I had way too much slides. But I think this slide sort of summarizes in Dutch, so I do apologize to everyone from abroad. But this one summarizes the network and what we're doing, and my colleagues have been doing it even way before 2016. What we try and do is collect physical objects that are digitized and digital objects about the Second World War or from the Second World War, and about the Netherlands or the Dutch people, or where the Dutch people also went related to the Second World War, so also a colonial war and pre-war information. So most of the collections are physical objects that are digitized by archives, museums, organizations, camps, private companies, organizations, and we collect everything. So we take in newspapers, photographs, videos, archives, objects, whatever. And of course, I will have a next slide. We collect it all. We look at the metadata. We're currently looking at the metadata. In next iterations, we are also interested in full text, so read the entire book or the article or whatever. But currently, we look at the metadata and we try to combine it to the very traditional questions that an historian would pose, and that is, what is it, who is it, why is it, and when was it? So the wie, wat, waar, wanneer questions. And this is where, so this is, these are the numbers of things that we collected. We started collecting objects, and we currently have 12.5 million objects, ranging from newspaper clippings to photographs, archival material, etc. But during during the last years, we also started collecting information about people. So that's the part of on the right of my screen. We also got lines from records or from archives with names. So one line could be about Jacob de Vries, and then there's another archival document about J. de Vries. And well, then the question comes up, is this the same person or is it someone else? And how do I know whether or not it's the same person? But in total, we now have approximately more than 2.5 million lines with names or information about people that were in some way or the other affected by the Second World War. And I explicitly say affected because it can either be a civilian standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. It can be someone that was actively involved in the Second World War but survived, like military men or resistance fighters. We also collect information about people that collaborated with the Germans or the German occupators that were active in the Netherlands. So it's everyone that has some sort of relation to the Second World War. So we started collecting data from all these archives. When I started working for the network in 2016, we had 12 APIs from partners, 12 OAE PMH APIs. So we got Dublin Core, and well, we harvested it occasionally. We had someone dedicated to programming stuff to get the data into our database, and that was a hell of a job. So we had no control over any technology that we had, and it was very complicated. And the programmer, on the other hand, had no knowledge of historical objects nor the Second World War. So I would have to explain to him what, what is a museum object, what is an archival piece of material, what is the Second World War, when did it start, what are the objects we're looking for, how do they look, what is the common language in this field. And I got utterly frustrated. So that's when we started switching and I wanted to take control over the technology to get data in our database. So this is the end result that we're doing now, but we just started with getting the data, harvesting the data, and being able to do that on our own and make our own decisions, collect whatever we wanted to collect. And this is the workflow that we now have. So we harvest stuff, we convert it to linked open data. We use XSLT to do that. You could use anything, but it's fairly easy once you know how to do it. And the thing I find most important, and we'll come back to, is the matching, because we don't just convert data from someone to linked open data. It's just half of the process. The other thing is that we link it to everything else that we have, and that can be linked open data or anything else. I'll come back to this. And then we output it to our website. Well, Michiel already started talking about the Dam incident, or the shooting at the Dam Square in Amsterdam. The day the Canadians liberated Amsterdam, 7th of May 1945, a lot of people, inhabitants of Amsterdam, came to the Dam Square, the central square, to celebrate the liberation of Amsterdam. A big party it was, but there were a couple of German soldiers left in one building, the Grote Club, and they got really nervous about what was happening in the square below them, and they started shooting at the people that were partying in the square. It's called the Dam incident. 33 people were killed that day. So during liberation, 33 people still got killed. So it's not the most famous story about the Second World War, but there is a book, and there's of course a monument, and people know something about it. And the weird thing is that there's a lot of different information in it, a lot of different collections about this event, and we didn't know it was. Because a lot of times it just wasn't metadated as Dam incident. It was just metadated as Dam Square or incident or shooting or just 7th of May of 1945. And of course, I've worked with collections all day long. So you start looking at these images, and these are, well, the photographs are fairly well metadated. So you can see, oh, there's a Dam incident. But on the first image, you can see 8th of May. And the other images say 7th of May. And then there's something else that says shooting at the dam. So a lot of times with our collections, because I work with it on a daily basis, you're just doing your work and you look at them and you think, what is happening here? What am I looking at as an innocent or a bystander in this website, or someone using this website? And then I even found a movie about the shooting at the Dam Square. And because of time's sake, I won't play it now, but really you should have a look at, you should play this later on. It's really fascinating because you can see the whole event happening. You can see people celebrating in the Dam Square, and then you suddenly see people running away. And with Ukraine at the moment, it's, you know, it's something that really is a very impressive movie about a war, effect of war. But what I found interesting was that all these different snippets coming from very different collections all had sort of the same metadata, but not exactly the same. So this is one of the many, many different events or incidents that we have in our collection that are, you know, just flaunting around in the database. They're not connected, they're just sitting there. And we decided a couple of years ago to build a thesaurus, and the NIOD actually already had a thesaurus about the Second World War, but this thesaurus in the beginning was just describing high-level things about the Second World War, so concepts, and materials, etc. We decided to expand the thesaurus to be able to connect all these different objects together. And the connecting point for all these objects is, in this case, an event, the dam incident event. And so this is a card in our thesaurus about the dam incident. As you can see, we've written scope notes. There are many different alternative labels, and we use all these different alternative labels to find all these different objects in all these different collections, because everyone gives an event a different name. So how do we know that this event is the same as this event in another collection?
And now at 10 minutes, Lizzy.
Oh, yeah, I'll speed up a bit. We also collect objects, etc., resources, etc. So our thesaurus now is no longer, your regular thesaurus. It's more of an encyclopedia, and it also has a lot of sources describing an event that are not objects, but are, further readings and, evidence why we know that this is an event and it has dating, etc. So our thesaurus currently has, I think, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, something like that, concepts in it, and it's growing. I have 2 colleagues working on the thesaurus. And we only did this to connect all these objects together and have one story, have one label that all these objects are about the same event. And so this is when I started using Spindesk on a daily and heavily basis, because we realized that we can use Spink to get data to our website, so to get information connected to triples and then put it on our website. But that's only half of the usage we have of Spink software. I personally am doing this a lot more. I'm constantly linking objects. So I link metadata from one organization to our thesaurus, or to another organization, to biographies. Whatever we can connect, we try and connect. And of course, we have a lot of mismatches, but a lot of times with some simple algorithms or strategies, you can link data to links data. And that is, in my opinion, what linked data should be all about. So we're constantly building these kinds of models to connect one object to a story, or one object to another object, or one line about a person to another line about a person. And this is how we output what we're doing in our daily work. So we're writing these small encyclopedic stories about events during the Second World War. We collect objects and attach them to them. But we also know about other events that may be relevant to this specific incident. So this one is in Amsterdam, but the bombardment of the Blauburg Wall is also in Amsterdam. But we're not just connecting other events, we're also connecting people. And this is something I'm currently putting a lot of energy in, and it's really exciting. Because a lot of times you don't know who was the victim of a bombing or an incident or whatever. But we do have death certificates and other resources about people dying in specific places. Michiel already showed you the long list of people that were killed in Amsterdam, but you can zoom in on these long lists and see when they died and where they died. And then suddenly you can find all 33 victims of this incident at the Dam Square. And now we can really give them a face and a timeline and tell more about them. We can do this for this incident, but also for other incidents, and especially with bombings. There's not many other resources that focus on civilian casualties in war. So it's really great to give people their place and to show them on this website. And just zooming in on one boy, an 18-year-old boy that was killed at the Dam Square on May 7th. And for me, this was really a hidden gem. This boy was born in the south of the Netherlands. His entire family was in the resistance. His father was still in a German camp, incarcerated, while his son was shot on the 7th of May. I don't really understand how that worked, but he was still in the prison, I read somewhere. His brother was also incarcerated and in Germany. He himself was arrested and he was in Camp Amersfoort during the war. So he was only back from Camp Amersfoort for a couple of months when he was killed while celebrating the liberation of the Netherlands. And as you can see, we integrate information about people and combine them into these timelines. But we also try and tell bigger stories. So this boy was incarcerated in Camp Amersfoort. We also try and explain what was Camp Amersfoort, what happened in Camp Amersfoort during the Second World War. And in his case, yeah, I'm moving on. So we always work evidence-based. So these are the actual archival documents that we have about this boy. And for me, the eye-opener is that we have his passport from the City Archives of Amsterdam. This is how we know what he looked like, because his photograph is on this passport. So a lot of times these archives both tell an evidence-based story, but there are also very emotional documents where you really get to know a person. And then again, Michiel already touched upon this. We make combinations. So I'm moving on to Anne Frank. This is her transport to Camp Westerbork. And we don't even have an entity modeled for this event. We just know when she was transported from which place to which place on what date. And we look in all the other data that we have, people that were transported on the same dates to the same place. And then we can see that we have 783 other people that were on this same transport on the same day to the same place. And then we can give them all their own face and their own picture, and we can see what happened to everyone else on this transport. So this is what we've been working on. It was just out of curiosity when I saw all the objects that we had in our collection that I wanted to know what is connecting all these things. It's not just because they're in our database, but what are the stories they're trying to tell me, but they are not telling me because they are in different collections, have different metadata, have a vague relation, but you really have to study them to know what they're trying to tell you. So that's what we're trying to do. And we can now do it for these stories. My next quest will be to also work on cause and effect. And I would like to demonstrate it with the two images on the second row, because after the shooting on the dam, the Dutch resistance fighters, the BS, the Binnenlandse Strijdkrachten, they must have been pissed off about what just happened at the Dam Square. And they beat up Germans at the end of the Vondelpark. And we also have images of the BS beating up German soldiers. So that is a clear result of an action earlier on that day, but I don't know how to model this in linked open data. So that is going to be our next project. Thank you very much. And I hope it's a bit clear what we're trying to do here.
Thank you, Lizzy. Thank you very much. Maybe there's time for one question. And I saw one from Wesley. He asked, is there an attempt to link the dam incident victims to the Germans who were responsible? Yeah,
we definitely, of course, it is very complicated to get resources about the collaborating or the German side of it. But we are starting this year a huge program to digitize and add all the post-war tribunal archives. So they are not only about the victims of the Second World War, but they are the court cases of the people that collaborated with the Germans or, you know, were war criminals. And we we want to incorporate all this information. We have some examples in our data set already of people being liquidated and who liquidated who, so who was involved in the killing of who. And so we're working on it. Of course, it's very sensitive. We're still looking into models to present this information, and it's always scary to see how families respond to it, but we want to tell the entire story. So from everyone's perspective or everyone's part in it.
Okay, thanks, Lizzy. So any additional questions for Lizzy can go after the last presentation.